The cold steel pressed against his temple, slick with sweat. His finger trembled, poised on the trigger. Outside, the cacophony of snarls and tearing wood grew louder, a ravenous chorus closing in. This was it, the end of the line. But how did it come to this? Just hours ago, Deputy Spina had been humming along to the radio, the truck's heater blasting a welcome warmth against the Wyoming blizzard. The isolated road stretched before him, a canvas of fresh snow, his headlights cutting through the blinding flurries. He was searching for old Mr. Begley, reported missing by his frantic wife. A quick 2-hour trip turned into a 5-hour nightmare, the storm intensifying with every mile. Now, through the swirling white, a pair of red blinking lights pierced the gloom. The deputy coasted closer, the red lights growing clearer like angry eyes in the storm. He stopped, the hum of his own engine a lonely sound in the vast silence. Reaching for the CB, he cleared his throat. "Dispatch, this is Charlie 23, reporting a stopped automobile on Happy Jack Road. I am going to initiate contact. Over." Only the hiss of static answered, a mocking whisper in the empty air. He tried again. Nothing. A sigh escaped him, turning to a puff of vapor in the cold cab. He grabbed his hat, pulling it low. Switching on his emergency lights, he pushed open the creaking door. His boots sank into the deep, untouched snow, cold seeping through the leather. He trudged forward, head down, the potent smell of exhaust already filling his nostrils. As he neared the baby blue truck, its driver door hung ajar, a dark mouth in the blizzard. "Mr. Begley," Spina called out, his voice swallowed by the wind. "This is Deputy Spina, Sheriff Department. Are you in there?" Silence. Only the whistle of the wind replied, an eerie chorus. He peeked his head around the open door, an empty cab greeting him. A prickle of unease started in his gut. He closed the door, the action shaking snow onto his pants. "Goddamn it," he cursed, brushing the cold flakes away. That's when he saw them, boot prints, not leading back to the road, but away towards the unseen. He propped his hand near his holster, his senses sharpening. Following the impressions, he turned the corner of the truck. The carnage hit him then. Blood splattered crimson against the pristine snow, a brutal stain. The front bumper was mangled, dented inward. Whatever Mr. Begley had hit, it hadn't died. The blood trail was faint, almost swallowed by the falling snow, leading towards the dark tree line. Then, a loud snap echoed off in the distance. Spina drew his revolver, the cold metal a familiar weight in his gloved hand. His gaze swept the tree line, searching for the source of the sound. The blizzard seemed to hesitate, the flurries slowing, revealing a soft glow off to the side of the road. It grew more apparent with each passing second, a pulsing beacon in the encroaching darkness. He treaded cautiously, attempting to make his boots crunch as soft as possible, the snow muffling every sound but the frantic beat of his own heart. As he neared the glow, it resolved into a flashlight, half buried in the snow. He reached down, pulling it from the ground, brushing away the clinging flakes. Its beam cut a sharp line through the swirling white, illuminating the disturbed road verge. There had been a struggle here. Various bits of tattered red fabric were strewn about, like discarded blood petals. More blood. And then, the tracks. A set of prints unlike any he'd ever seen. "What the fuck?" he whispered, crouching down, bringing the flashlight closer. The tracks were wrong. 3 impressions sank into the snow where 4 should have been. 2 sat forward, long and narrow, pressed deep as if whatever made them carried most of its weight there. A 3rd mark trailed behind, wider, heavier, gouged straight down the center. He set his boot beside one. The print stretched past the toe, monstrous in its scale. Spina straightened slowly, a cold dread coiling in his gut. The beam of the flashlight swept the clearing again, but the tracks did not lead away. They simply ended, as if the creature had vanished into thin air or ascended. A sudden, loud, high-pitched chirping, followed by several sharp clacks, rang out from the trees. Spina swung the flashlight towards the woodline. At the base of one gnarled tree he saw it. Someone, sitting down back against the trunk, slumped over. They wore a tattered red flannel and a tan cattleman hat. Mr. Begley. "Mr. Begley, is that you?" Spina shouted, his voice cracking. He froze, holding his breath, awaiting a response. Only the wind whispered back a chilling answer. "Stay there, I'm coming to get you," he yelled, taking a few steps forward, the snow crunching beneath his boots. Then a slow, viscous drip. Liquid from up above fell near Mr. Begley, landing directly in the flashlight's beam. Spina froze, his hands trembling as he guided the flashlight upwards, his breath catching in his throat. What he saw made his blood run cold. A large, white mass, curled and stationary, clung to a thick branch directly overhead. It was a ball of matted fur, indistinct in the shadows. Slowly, sickeningly, the mass began to unfurl. A long, narrow snout broke free from the fur, dripping. It held an arm in its mouth. Blood matted its pristine white fur as it gnawed on its gruesome feast. Then it stopped. The creature dropped the arm into the snow with a soft thud. The creature flicked its tongue several times, tasting the air, then sniffed. Its head turned slowly, deliberately towards Spina, exposing a terrifying array of fangs. The thing snarled, a guttural sound, and clacked its incisors together before letting out a deafening screech that tore through the quiet night. Spina's instinct screamed. He dropped the flashlight, its beam now pointing uselessly at the snow, and spun to run. But it was too late. The beast leapt from the branch, a blur of white against the dark, landing nearly on top of him, knocking him face first into the deep snow. The impact stole his breath, the cold shock momentarily paralyzing him. He twisted his body around, desperate, as the creature drew its hand back, elongated claws poised to strike. With a surge of adrenaline, Spina quickly drew his revolver, firing 2 rounds into the monstrous form at point-blank range. Blood sprayed over him, warm and viscous, as the creature fell over, its body twitching and convulsing in the snow. Small whimpers escaped between its guttural coughing fits, its yips and yelps echoing through the trees. Spina scrambled back to his feet, wiping the blood from his face, spitting the metallic taste from his mouth. Then dozens of screeches pierced the air from all directions, a chorus of pure malice. Spina's head spun, disoriented by the assault on his ears. He continued his desperate dash back to the truck, his legs burning, but tripped over himself, sprawling once more in the unforgiving snow. Scrambling up, he pushed through the last few yards. The still-running truck's warmth radiated outwards as he tore open the door. He practically dove into the seat, tossing his hat aside, and slammed the truck into reverse, spinning the wheel, swinging the tail end back towards Cheyenne. As the truck's rear swung right, its lights cut through the swirling snow, illuminating the creatures to the left. 4 of the beasts stood in the harsh glare of the headlights. Their chests rose and fell in ragged breaths, tongues flicking the air like whips, fangs bared in silent snarls. Spina flicked on his high beams. The intensified light now revealed the trees behind them. Several others littered the tree line, making incredible, silent leaps from branch to branch, their forms like white specters in the storm. "Dispatch, this is Spina. Do you copy?" He yelled into the radio, his voice strained. Only static filled the airwaves, a cruel echo of his own desperation. "Fuck!" he roared, slamming his fist on the steering wheel, the metal cold against his skin. He ran a trembling hand through his hair, his eyes darting to the rearview mirror. The creatures were creeping forward, a silent, predatory advance. Spina gritted his teeth, his jaw aching, and slammed the truck into gear, flooring the gas pedal. The engine roared, tires spinning for purchase in the deep snow. All the creatures but one moved out of the way, leaping with unnatural speed. The lone beast, a defiant silhouette in the headlights, arched its back and let out a piercing screech. The truck barreled over it, a sickening thud echoing through the cab, as if it were nothing more than a speed bump. But the reprieve was short-lived. A loud thud hit the roof of the truck, directly above him, as one of the creatures landed. Claws, long and sharp, ripped through the metal, tearing at the roof. An arm, pale and grotesque, dropped through the jagged opening, wildly waving its paw around until it found flesh. It pulled. "Goddamn it!" Spina screamed, letting go of the steering wheel. He unholstered his revolver, firing another barrage of bullets upwards through the mangled roof. The truck swerved violently off the side of the road, launching the wailing creature from its perch. He dropped his gun, his hand shooting back to the steering wheel, wrestling back control, getting the truck back onto the treacherous path. In the rearview mirror, he could see them, a pack of white phantoms, galloping towards him with terrifying speed, their forms blurring in the snow. It wasn't until he reached fourth gear, the engine screaming, that he began to put any real distance between them. He grabbed the radio once again, his hand shaking. "Dispatch, this is Spina. Do you read me? Over." No answer. Only the blazing heater and the cold winds responded, a cruel duet. "Come on, answer me." Tears welled in his eyes, blurring the road ahead. Spina smacked the steering wheel several times, a desperate plea, then bit his lip, holding his breath against the rising terror. He wiped his tears, pressing a hand to his aching shoulder, then exhaled slowly. A small, faded sign flashed by in the high beams. Ranger Station Whiskey 0, 3 miles. A faint glimmer of hope sparked within him, a desperate flicker in the overwhelming darkness. He began to downshift, the truck groaning in protest as he neared the turnoff. Eventually, he swung onto the service road. Thick, untouched snow covered the path, swallowing the tires instantly. The only things guiding Spina were reflecting markers, barely illuminating his way through the dense, surrounding forest that blocked out all other light. The truck's tires sank deeper into the virgin snow, the vehicle becoming bogged down. He punched the gas, sending his truck swerving wildly down the treacherous road. Several violent bumps threw him from side to side, his head rattling against the window. He tried to wrestle back control, but the momentum was too great. He lost it. The front end of the truck jumped into the air with a sickening lurch, striking an unseen object hidden beneath the deep snow. The high beams, now angled skyward, hit something a few dozen yards back, sending a glint of reflected light back through the swirling white. The truck slammed back down with a bone-jarring impact, and so did Spina. His head collided with the dash. Spina opened his eyes. A warm liquid dribbled down from his forehead, hot and sticky against his skin. His vision swam in and out of focus, the world a blurry, disorienting mess. The faint sound of shrieking, a high-pitched, insistent caterwaul, snapped his eyes open, jolting him fully awake. He swiped his hand around the cab, desperate, searching for his revolver. His fingers brushed against cold steel, gripping it like a lifeline. He tore open the glove compartment, grabbing the box of rounds inside, stuffing it into his jacket pocket. He tried to open the driver door, but it was met with equal resistance, jammed shut by the deep snow. He wiped the condensation from the window, his breath fogging the glass, and could now see the snow nearly touching the base of it. Spina grabbed the handle and rolled the window down, the cold air rushing in. He slithered out onto the snow, falling deeper into its icy embrace. Pushing himself upright, he got his bearings. A large, triangular silhouette was barely highlighted from the faint glow of the sun's first, struggling light, rising above the snow. He picked his legs up as much as he could, trudging through the waist-deep snow towards the structure, each step an agonizing effort. He would pause periodically, freezing, whenever a caterwaul would break the silence, closer now. Slowly, painstakingly, Spina would rise above the snow, his feet finally meeting a firm, wooden surface. His pace increased as he high-kneed out of the deep snow, stumbling forward, collapsing onto the wooden porch of the ranger station. He pushed himself up, his muscles screaming in protest, and lunged for the door. He jiggled the doorknob frantically, but it didn't budge. Of course it's fucking locked, he thought, a bitter laugh catching in his throat. He frantically looked around the porch, his eyes wide with desperation, searching for any sign of a key. Under the rug, nothing. The gnome next to the door, empty. Behind the welcome sign, still nothing. The silence was broken by a sudden, sharp crack of branches directly above him, sending a cascade of snow falling to the ground. Spina froze, holding his breath, his eyes darting upwards. A few yips and the chilling sound of teeth clacking echoed from the unseen canopy before a scout. A white blur against the dark branches jumped to another tree, disappearing into the fog. He exhaled, a ragged breath. He continued his frantic search, his fingers numb with cold, feeling around the door frame. Right in the middle, on the top, his fingers brushed against cold metal. A key. He snatched it, fumbling with the lock. It slid in. Click. The sound was deafening in the silence. The door swung open, a gust of cold, snowy air rushing in, as if invited. Small swoops of snow danced across the threshold. Spina practically jumped through the doorway, slamming the door shut behind him, twisting the lock with a desperate urgency. He blindly swiped around the wall for a light switch, his hand brushing against cold wood, then finally finding the plastic toggle. He flicked it on. The dim light of a single bulb filled the small, dusty room, revealing a cluttered, forgotten space. A hard thud hit the porch outside, directly against the door he had just secured. It was followed by the low, ominous creaking of wood, straining under weight. Spina crept towards a covered window, his heart hammering against his ribs. His shaky hand pulled the curtain back just a sliver. The thin slash of light cut through the dark, revealing the gently falling snow. A tongue, long and pale, flicked in and out of sight, inches from the glass. Spina snapped the curtains closed. Several high-pitched yips rang out, closer now, a chorus of hungry anticipation. Panic surged through Spina. He began dragging furniture, anything he could find, towards every window and door. Cupboards, couches, chairs, coffee tables, all were lined against the weak barriers, barricading any possible entry, creating a makeshift fortress against the unseen. The yipping from the front soon was joined by yips coming from the rear and sides, a chilling symphony of hungry predators. Thuds thundered from the roof above, heavy impacts shaking the entire structure. Glass shattered from a distant window, the sound like a gunshot in the confined space. Dressers scraped across the floor as unseen forces pushed to get in, their weight straining the barricades. Paws with elongated claws began to pry their way through the gaps, thin, pale digits seeking purchase. Spina stumbled backwards, away from the sounds of intrusion into the dark bathroom. He slammed the door shut, the flimsy wood rattling, and twisted the lock, a desperate, futile gesture. Spina flicked the light switch on, the single bulb casting harsh shadows in the small, tiled room. He took the gun and the box of ammo out of his coat pocket, dumping them into the sink with a clatter. He picked up the revolver, his hands still trembling, and snapped it open, emptying the spent shells onto the porcelain. Only one unfired round remained in the cylinder. His fingers malfunctioned, stiff with cold and fear, losing grip several times as he tried to grab the lip of the ammunition box. The remaining bullets tumbled out, scattering in the sink. 6 rounds, 7 total. He packed the revolver full, each bullet a precious commodity, and tucked the last, solitary round into his coat pocket. The barricades were groaning under immense pressure outside. A barrage of crashes and stomping now filled the house beyond the door, a terrifying symphony of destruction. Spina shut the light off, plunging the bathroom into oppressive darkness. His revolver, now fully loaded, was fixed towards the door, the hammer drawn back. He backed into the furthest corner, squatting low, becoming one with the shadows. A few sniffs at the bottom of the door snuck in, followed by the sickening sound of a tongue flicking, tasting the air beneath the gap. He could hear its ragged breath, close, too close. Spina fired a shot, the muzzle flash momentarily blinding him, illuminating the dark, cramped space in a stark white burst. Thud, a heavy, wet sound. Then, slowly, sickeningly, a dark, viscous liquid began to seep under the door like molasses, spreading across the cold tile floor. Through the bullet hole, a sliver of light spilled in from the hallway. Spina watched as flashes of white, the creatures themselves, raced around the house, their forms indistinct and terrifying in the strobe-like illumination. The sliver of light was suddenly taken over by darkness as a creature eclipsed the bullet hole. It stopped, its black, sunken eyes peering through the small aperture. Its maw opened, letting out a deafening wail, only to be interrupted with a bullet to the skull. What sounded like a flood of monsters crashed against the door, their collective weight threatening to splinter it from its frame. Bang! The muzzle flashed again, a blinding burst in the darkness. Bang! Another round, another roar of sound. Bang! The door shook, groaned, wood splintering under the relentless assault. Light from the bullet holes now strobed, revealing the beasts crawling over each other, a writhing mass of white fur and snapping jaws. Claws tore at the door, creating deep, ragged gashes in the wood. Each tear was a testament to their brute force, a countdown to his demise. Bang! Another shot, another shriek of pain. Click! The sound was stark, final. The hammer fell on an empty chamber. Spina's blood ran cold. He was out of bullets. The last one. Gone. A wave of pure, unadulterated terror washed over him. "Fuck!" Spina screamed, the sound raw and guttural. He opened the revolver, his hands shaking so violently he nearly dropped it, and emptied the spent shells onto the floor. They clattered against the tile, mocking him. He fumbled in his coat pocket, his fingers finding the last bullet. The solitary, cold piece of metal. He grabbed it, his last hope, and loaded it into the revolver. Tears streamed from his eyes, hot trails on his blood-smeared face. He raised his revolver one last time, pointing it at the door, his arms shaking with unsteadiness. The door, already a mangled mess of splintered wood, finally gave way. A creature, larger and more grotesque than the others, broke through, managing to get its torso halfway through the opening. Its maw snapped shut with a sickening clack, its fangs dripping saliva. Its elongated claws swiped wildly at Spina, narrowly missing him, the wind of their passage chilling his face. Spina retracted the revolver, pulling it back to avoid being slashed by the creature's razor-sharp claws. Behind the first beast, he could see more. Dozens of them, spilling through the shattered windows and torn doors of the ranger station, a tide of white fur and snapping jaws. They were everywhere. His sanctuary was breached, utterly overrun. There was no escape, no way out. He cocked the hammer back on his revolver, the metallic click echoing in the small, enclosed space, a final, definitive sound. His breath hitched in his throat. His eyes, wide with a despair beyond words, darted to the single, loaded chamber. He brought the cold steel of the revolver up, slowly, deliberately. He placed it against his temple, one last breath, one last thought. Bang! That brings us to the end of today's video. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this, hit that like button and subscribe to join the channel. I'd love to hear your thoughts or any changes you'd like to see in the comments below. Until we meet in another story, take care.